Okay, did you all figure out this first slide? If not, that's okay, because we'll return to it later. This is a picture of my friend Tom Rich and his weapon of choice, his daughter Paris, and his pride and joy, his .300 Weatherby rifle. I always seem to get those two mixed up. Now, Tom was born in Philadelphia, which is home to the Liberty Bell. And his mother's parents immigrated to the United States from Germany. Now, his father was pure Apache. As a matter of fact, his grandfather rode alongside Geronimo. Now, you might be asking yourself, what are Apaches doing in Philadelphia? Well, it turns out that Apache men have no fear of heights, and so a lot of them were hired when it came to the construction of the New York skyline. Now, I always referred to my friend Tom as the real-life Indiana Jones, because in his past time, he liked to do treasure hunting and prospecting. Now, he used to do a lot of prospecting in Black Rock Desert, and he spent so much time there that he got the nickname of Black Rock. Now, you might be asking yourself, where have I heard Black Rock before? Well, perhaps it's because it's home to Burning Man. And of course, Paris saw to it that Tom at least went to one Burning Man. Now, one of the treasures that Tom was looking for was actually in our backyard, and it had to do with the Wells Fargo stagecoach and the route from Virginia City to Carson City, which was a 13-mile stretch. Now, sometimes the stagecoach would also carry gold and silver bullion. On this one particular trip, it was carrying 300 pounds of gold bullion, and somewhere along the way, it was held up by 4 banditos, and they robbed the passengers as well as taking the gold bullion. Now, the stagecoach driver, when he got into Carson City, he notified the sheriff, and the sheriff put together a posse and tracked the 4 banditos and cornered them in a box canyon, in which there was a gun battle, and 3 of the banditos died, while the 4th one was sentenced to a term in the Nevada State Territorial Prison. While he was there, he would brag to prisoners and guards that he could see the treasure from his cell window. Now, this bandito only served 8 years because he got time off for good behavior. However, he only lived for about a month past the time that he was released from prison, and it is said that he passed from natural causes. Now, this is a picture of the Nevada Territorial Prison back in the day, and you can see the windows where this prisoner had been looking out of. This is also a time period photo of the Carson Valley taken from the hilltop in which the Nevada Territorial Prison was located. So if you see anything in this picture that piques your interest, you might want to go to Carson City and the outlying area and see if you can locate the treasure, because at today's gold prices, it would be worth around $9 million. Now, Tom did tell me that when he went looking for this treasure, he got a sense that the spirits of the banditos didn't want anyone to find it. Now everyone has most likely heard of the Lost Dutchman gold mine, which was located in Superstition Mountains near Apache Junction. Now, most people think that the prospector that located this mine was actually of Dutch descent, but he was really of German heritage. And a lot of people have gone out looking for the Lost Dutchman gold mine, and some have died from mysterious reasons. However, Tom used to go look for this. He never found it, but there's a company out of Ohio who hired some guys to go look for it using the clues that were provided by the map, and they believe that they found the Lost Dutchman gold mine. Now, unlike the stories written back in the times, the walls of the cave were not totally lined with gold, but there's a lot of gold there. However, you can't mine the gold. For one, the terrain is too treacherous, and so you can't get a road into there. And the other thing is that you cannot have a mining operation on a national park, and that seems to be where this particular cave is located. Now, one of the other bigger treasures that Tom was looking for had to do with the Utah War. And it was also referred to as Buchanan's blunder, because President Buchanan sent the U.S. Army out to the Utah Territory in order to check out the Mormon settlements and the church. Now, the Mormon leaders thought that the army was being sent to annihilate them. So they gathered up all their wealth and riches and church artifacts and put them on a wagon train that was headed south to a Mormon settlement which was just east of Las Vegas. And as you can see by the map, the Mormon Trail would go from Salt Lake into southern Nevada and actually continue on through to Los Angeles, California. Now, along the way, the wagon train was raided by a group or band of Indians. And Tom felt that with his Indian heritage, that he could go talk to these tribes people and find out where they had hidden the treasure. Because as far as he was concerned, the Indians really didn't have any use for any of the valuable gold or whatever and artifacts that were on the train, so he figured they just hid him somewhere. Now, if he located this spot, he was going to give heirlooms back to the Mormon families. He would sell the church articles back to the Mormon church, and anything left over he would sell and then give all the proceeds back to the Indian community. Now, Tom also served in the Korean War, where he was like a radio operator and code breaker, and he would later in life receive national security clearance. But also, he was court-martialed for shooting at an officer. And the way the story goes is Tom's encampment was located on a hilltop, and there was a single road that led up to it. Now, the North Koreans were always trying to overtake this position. So one night, Tom was on outer perimeter guard duty, and this officer decided that he wanted to go up to the encampment. And his driver said, "Well, do you have the password?" And the officer, whom I'm assuming was probably a second lieutenant by the way he behaved, said no. And so as much as the driver tried to talk him out of it, they ended up going to the top of the road where the encampment was. And so Tom called out to them and said, "What's the password?" And he heard nothing. He then called out to them a second time and asked, "What's the password?" Again, he got no response. So he began firing in the direction of the vehicle. The officer and his driver ended up scrambling back down the road. The next thing Tom knew, he was on a witness stand and he was being asked for his accounting of what happened that night. And Tom replied, "Well, there was no moonlight that evening. It was pitch black. This vehicle shows up. I called out and asked for the password. I heard nothing. I then called out a second time. Again, there was no response, and therefore I laid down a volley of fire in the direction of the vehicle." So in other words, you were doing your duty. Yes, sir. Case dismissed. Now there was another occurrence that happened at the encampment. And it turns out that anyone that worked the radio room in the evening also had the duty of cleaning up the commanding officer's office. And one night, while throwing out the trash, they noticed a letter. It was one of those for your eyes only letters. And they read it, and it said in part, "If your encampment is ever overrun by the enemy, make sure that the radio men and especially the code breakers do not end up in the hands of the enemy." So from that point on, anyone working the radio room showed up for duty armed to the teeth. And if ever the encampment was ever being overrun by the North Koreans, whoever had the misfortune of opening that door was going to get lit up. Now you might be asking me, what does this all have to do with Red Skelton? Well, give me a moment. One evening, Tom was escorted out of the showroom at Harrah's by security. The performer that evening was none other than Mr. Hockey Puck himself, Don Rickles. And during his performance, Tom stood up and yelled out, "The only reason you're out here is because they're cleaning your cage backstage." Oh boy. Well, if you know anything about Don Rickles, you know that he is obnoxious and demeaning. Much like that first slide I showed you. This brings me to Red Skelton. Now, Red Skelton was never obnoxious, and most definitely he was never demeaning. As a matter of fact, his one great pride was the fact that in all of his performances, he never once uttered a single word of profanity. Now, Red Skelton was born on July 18, 1913. My grandmother was born on July 18, 1911. So one time, Red Skelton was performing at the Jonasquagas Nugget on his birthday. And so we decided to take my grandmother to see his show on that evening. Now, when Red Skelton came out, the first thing he announced was, "It's my birthday." And he asked the audience how many there were also celebrating their birthday, and half the room raised their hands. It was kind of like a convention for people who were born on July 8th. Now, the Lions Club International, as well as Lions Clubs throughout the world, and the Springfield Lions Club, have a program called Flags for First Graders. And they go out to elementary schools, and especially the first grade, and they pass out miniature flags and a pedestal to put them in to all the first graders, as well as explaining the meaning of the American flag, the stars and stripes. I want to share with you a video from Red Skelton entitled "The Pledge of Allegiance."
I remember a teacher that I had. Now, I went through the 7th grade. I went to the 7th grade. And I left home when I was 10 years old because I was hungry. And I used to, this is true. I work in the summer and I go to school in the winter. But I had this one teacher. He was the principal of the Harrison School in Vincennes, Indiana. To me, this was the greatest teacher, a real sage of my time, anyhow. He had such wisdom. And we were all reciting the Pledge of Allegiance one day. And he walked over, this little old teacher. Mr. Laswell was his name. Mr. Laswell. And he says, he says, "I've been listening to you boys and girls recite the Pledge of Allegiance all semester. And it seems as though it's becoming monotonous to you. If I may I recite it and try to explain to you the meaning of each word. I, me, an individual, a committee of one, pledge, dedicate all of my worldly goods to give without self-pity. Allegiance, my love and my devotion to the flag, our standard, oh glory, a symbol of freedom. Wherever she waves, there's respect, because your loyalty has given her a dignity that shouts freedom is everybody's job. United. That means that we have all come together. States, individual communities that have united into 48 great states. 48 individual communities with pride and dignity and purpose. All divided with imaginary boundaries, yet united to a common purpose. And that's love for country. And to the republic, a state in which sovereign power is invested in representatives chosen by the people to govern. And government is the people. And it's from the people to the leaders, not from the leaders to the people, for which it stands. One nation, meaning so blessed by God, indivisible, incapable of being divided, with liberty, which is freedom, the right of power to live one's own life without threats, fear, or some sort of retaliation. And justice, the principle or qualities of dealing fairly with others. For all, which means, boys and girls, it's as much your country as it is mine. And now, boys and girls, let me hear you recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Since I was a small boy, 2 states have been added to our country, and 2 words have been added to the Pledge of Allegiance. under God. Wouldn't it be a pity if someone said that is a prayer and that would be eliminated from schools too?
This is a photo of my friend Tom and his daughter Paris. Tom's last battle was with Alzheimer's disease, and he lost that battle in 2021 in the month of February. In 2002, a friend of ours passed away rather suddenly, and I remember calling Tom and asking him if he had seen Matt's obituary and if he was going to attend his funeral. And Tom informed me that he didn't attend funerals and that when he passed away, there would be no funeral for him. Hence, I never got a chance to say goodbye. So perhaps today, as I share the story of a great American who had ancestral ties to the first Native Americans, I got that opportunity. I want to share with you another little snippet from Red Skelton, which is a fond memory of mine during my childhood.
I sincerely hope that I haven't said or done anything to offend anyone. If I did, I really didn't mean to. I do hope that you had as much fun as I had. It's really a lot of fun to try and make people laugh. I personally believe that each and every one of us was put here for a purpose. That's to build and not to destroy. And if by chance someday you're not feeling well, and you should remember some silly little thing that I've said or done, and it brings back a smile to your face or a chuckle to your heart, then my purpose has been served for my fellow man. May I wish you all continued success, and God bless. Good night. Thank you.
Whenever I would meet or call Tom, he would always greet me with Yetahe. Yetahe is Navajo, which means hello, goodbye, or all is well, just like the word aloha. So I'd like to say at this time, Yetahe to my friend Tom Black Rock Rich.